you don't really want to have that targeting your own rogue. So Shaman's very good against most of their lists. It's not a surprise ban, really. And one of the Shamans was interesting, though. It did have the Crazed Alchemist in it to deal with the Doomsayers, but only one Doomsayer in this lineup for both including both players here. So
yeah, we've definitely seen the power of Doomsayer recently in terms of just buying more turns and just shutting out the more aggressive decks. I know it's a card you
it's
like,
silly.
DJ.
It's absolutely silly. It's so strong right now because what do? Besides Crazed Alchemist.
What do you do against Doomsayer?
It's crazy. We were talking the other day. It might have even been you. Someone on the cast said it like, maybe it would even be good in Zoo Warlock when you have a bad hand.
It might have been
me.
Like, it just resets the board, right?
When you have a bad hand, you just throw Doomsayer out there, and it's like, well, you get a free whole turn. We're seeing it popping up in Midrange Hunter, which Midrange Hunter has sort of become a deck that waits until their power turns. Turn 6 with High Main, and of course turn 8 with Call of the Wild. As long as you can survive up until that point, you'll always be in a good spot if you can play those power cards. And so Doomsayer just gives you that extra turn in a deck that misses the early game a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we've seen the popularity of it in Hunter, for example. It's lost a lot of its early drops and the power of those cards, like Creeper, Mad Scientist, so on. And we see it even played in that. And speaking of Hunter, PNC is going to be playing it for the first game versus Gallon, playing the Rogue. I will leave this one to you guys. Enjoy the match.
Goodbye, Raven.
This is kind of the matchup he was looking for here. Hunter going into Rogue. You can put on that early pressure and try to get him down before he reaches that combo turn later on. Lists here, mulligans here, looking for the stronger curves on both sides, looking for minions on Gallon's side.
Yeah, the thing about this matchup for Hunter, though, is it's a lot harder. Rogue is a deck that wants to control the early game, but they do it in a way that's different from other control decks. They do it with powerful minions, which means that once the Hunter falls behind, it's really hard for them to get back in the game. So as the Hunter, a lot of times, your win condition in this matchup is just to pressure early and hope you can burn the Rogue out before they piece together enough damage to kill you.
It's not an exciting curve here for PNC. It's a little bit awkward with the coin. He's got the 2, he's got the 3, but he doesn't have a turn 1 play, which is pretty important for the Hunter. But his deck is kind of favoring not having those 1-drops. He only has that 1 Fiery Bat in it, which is a little bit unique. And it makes room for cards like Carrion Grub, which we see here, and actually 2 copies of it. This cool 2/5 minion, a beast, of course, which is new in Whispers of the Old Gods.
Yeah, I'm not really liking the Fiery Bat inclusion in a lot of these decks. I've tried it out extensively, and a lot of times as the Hunter, especially if you're running Doomsayers, you can afford to not include any 1-drops and just play Freezing Traps and Doomsayers to try and get rid of that early game. But PNC is playing Flame Jugglers instead of Doomsayers in that 2 slot. So he needs a little bit of help in the early game, and that's why he goes ahead and runs that 1-drop Fiery Bat.
Looks like he's favoring just getting some early pressure on over, curving out a little better, and saving the coin for a later turn. Not much answer here, though, for Gallon. I mean, he's just looking at some dead cards. But a lot of times with Miracle Rogue, your turn 2 is just set up your weapon and get ready to play the 3 and 4 drops.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Rogue, other than like backstabbing a 2-drop, I don't think I've seen a Rogue do anything except for hero power and pass in a long time. There's always some players that feel bold enough to play the Undercity Huckster, but it's usually in like, I don't even know, the weird...
Death Rattle.
Yeah, Death Rattle Rogues. Yeah. It's rarely seen in Miracle Rogue because it is quite an inconsistent card. It doesn't help your early game that much.
Freezing Trap going down, which is just a preventative measure early on. He's got the mana. He just picked this up. Might as well set it up now. Rogue typically isn't running a bunch of smaller minions. Now, with the Violet Teacher, the Rogue does have that option, but we actually see in Gallon's list he's not running that card, so there's no risk of this missing on a little 1/1 minion.
Yeah, Violet Teacher a lot of times is a one-of in these Miracle decks. There's a couple cards that are usually substituted for it. Second Deadly Poison and Shiv are usually the 2 that are the most common. Some players also will even take out an Earthen Ring Farseer to put in that Violet Teacher. But that's a little too greedy, especially since in this tournament, most of those players have been weeded out because we've seen a lot more aggressive decks, a lot more Freeze Mage, which is, those type of decks where Earthen Ring Farseer helps the most.
Now PNC is going to go ahead and take out this Freezing Trap while he still is not facing down an Eagle Horn bow. Might as well also set up his Tomb Pillager to attack in a future turn. Now, the reason for the inclusion of these Carrion Grubs is this Houndmaster card, which is a basic card. Everyone has access to it, and that puts this Carrion Grub up to a 4/7.
Yeah.
And that's just crazy on turn 4.
Yeah, it trades into Tomb Pillager. A 4/7 body is just huge to deal with. Now, Gallon has to use this sap, and this seems a little risky, especially since, you know, Savannah Highmane can wreak havoc on a board if it's allowed to stay there for a turn. But as the rogue, you can't afford to lose control of the board in the early game. I talked about how a lot of times that's how a rogue wins. They take control of the board in the early game, and then they burn the hunter out before they can kill them. And if you let the hunter get in early damage, it becomes really hard to win.
Gallon pretty much predicted that Houndmaster in play, and PNC longingly hovering over it there for a moment, thinking, oh, what could have been with my Carrion Grub. But now he's got a tougher choice. Do I replay this Grub, which it's just going to get killed by the Tomb Pillager? Is Deadly Shot, is this a ripe board for Deadly Shot? You kind of want to save that for the Gadget Zan Auctioneer.
You do want to save it for the Gadget Zan Auctioneer, but I mean, I've said it before, this... If you wait too long, if you fall behind, the rogue has way more tools than the hunter in that mid-game. Even though Savannah Highmane is a fantastic drop, I mean, it doesn't really do much against a concealed Highmane. You get that, or sorry, a concealed Gadget Zan Auctioneer, which allows you to get that draw engine. And so it's sort of a necessity. Even though you ideally would like to have that for Gadget Zan Auctioneer, you can't wait around forever with that in your hand.
Might see a little bit of additional board control here. Now, if that Flame Juggler happens to hit that Azure Drake, the quick shot will become quite good at this point. I think he's going to go ahead and do that. The other option here is to set up that Carrion Grub, maybe trade both into the Azure Drake. You're not really looking to leave that on the board. So, and he's, of course, PNC is going to agree with that line of play.
Yeah, and this does fit the curve better. He's rolling into Savannah Highmane next turn, and then into a Call of the Wild on turn 8. So he just wants to make sure that he has some semblance of a board. Try and bait out as much as possible. 2 Flame Jugglers is actually about the same amount of threat as the Carrion Grub, to be honest, even though it's just 1 card compared to 2, just because of the threat of Houndmaster.
Great pickup off the top of that SI7 agent. It gives Gallon a way to fill out the rest of his mana crystals here, finish his curve, and put something on the board which can test the Grub. Now he has to make another decision here. Am I just going to go ahead and stab this Grub? How much do I think he's got that Houndmaster and not the Highmane?
Yeah, and also, even if like he doesn't have either of those, it's just taking 4 damage, potentially 6 damage if you have to attack it twice over 2 turns, is a lot. And now PNC draws into the second Call of the Wild, so if this game goes to turn 9, it's pretty much over.
Yeah, it's done. Well, another interesting choice here. PNC can pick between Houndmaster, Flame Juggler. Flame Juggler would give him a chance to juggle that as well, so maybe he might hit the face, get an extra damage in there, or Savannah Highmane, which leaves his Grub a little bit exposed.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he's worried too. The thing he's worried about is the second sap. But again, sometimes you just have to take those risks. Gallon hasn't been through that much of his deck, and for him to have the second sap in his first 10 to 13 cards is actually relatively unlikely. So he takes the risk, and he is going to be slightly punished for it, but I don't think that that's the wrong play by any means.
Right. It basically was, do I bet against the second sap, or do I bet against some other combination of cards? And I would bet against a second sap, man, like you said, TJ. But this does set up a very awkward turn for PNC again. Do I just throw the Savannah Highmane out there? I mean, yeah, probably. I've got these Call of the Wilds coming up. I'm just going to kind of follow my curve at this point. But the awkward part about it is your opponent's starting to set up that combo damage. So you might be a little bit at risk of dying from 30 soon.
Yeah. Gallon right now is just trying to calculate how much damage he's going to have. Most likely the play he's going to have to make is Leroy Coldblood plus Conceal. He's going to have to go try and set up the 2-turn lethal. So the dagger attack definitely makes sense. A lot of times you just can't wait for Gadget Zan Auctioneer. You basically just have to say, well, I need to make do with what I have in my hand and try and close out the game. And he has 7 damage being represented on board. Leroy plus Coldblood plus Conceal is going to put him below 10. So unless PNC can piece together lethal right now, it's not going to be it. And right now he has 7 plus 4, 11 plus 5. 16 damage is not going to be enough.
Not going to be enough, and not enough taunts here to actually prevent him from getting through. You will notice that he did use the Cold Blood on the SI7 agent and not on Leroy, and that is significant because that allows Leroy specifically to take out any Misha, the taunt from Call of the Wild that might go out on the board.
Well, he can double Houndmaster, which would bring the Savannah Highmane up to 9 health, which would absorb 2 attacks. Now, he could think that that would probably be his best way to survive based on the board state, but, you know, Gallon does have Coin, Eviscerate, Van Knives. He's got plenty of ways to just push through. He only needs one of those attacks effectively to get through.
In PNC's position, I think he's going to decide on that line of play too. It does also set up lethal for next turn should your opponent not have lethal. The conceal basically is what sealed up this game. Ha!
I'm all for puns, Bob.
I have no response to that.
Damn right.
And no shame in my pun. All right, to the face he goes, and we're going to see that lethal is going to come out here. PNC also a little bit psychic here. Gallon kind of predicting the Houndmasters, PNC predicting the upcoming lethal.
Yeah. I mean, at this stage in the game, you have to expect that your opponent had factored in most of the lines of play if he was to go for this. But, you know, that's having those 2 saps is pretty crucial. I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. That match is all about who can gain control of the board. And PNC had it early, but what he didn't manage to do was put on enough pressure to make going for that burn play the right way to win.
Right, and even though he didn't get the Auctioneer, it doesn't seem like there would have actually been an optimal turn to actually put that down and draw enough cards so that he could match the Hunter's power. And think about the next couple turns that were coming up. Call of the Wild again, Call of the Wild, or sorry, again, twice.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.